welcome back to the channel. It's Saturday morning. It's like 6 a.m. For some reason the dog thought I needed up at 4, so I'm up. So, just finished putting in the new screen door. See, now we'll sit here and read a book. Back to your guys' favorite, Civil Aircraft, 1907 to present, which was 2012. This is written by Paul Eden. So we'll just keep going where we left off from. We are talking trailblazing, 1919 to 1929. In terms of aircraft technology and airline operations, the 1920s was a decade of gradual improvement and growth. Level of competency in navigation had been reached, but navigational techniques would develop later, little until the widespread application of radio equipment to aircraft in the 1930s. See, in the early days of aviation, they literally had to look out the window and use maps of the ground and fly that way. It's called dead reckoning. So later, when they develop the radios, they can set the equipment in their airplane to a certain radio frequency and track to a radio beacon. So in the meantime, maps, compasses, clocks, and dead reckoning were the tools of the pilot's trade. With all the help from the rail lines, roads, and gratefully received. Needless, tentative steps were being taken, and Frenchman George Avelin developed a stabilizer, a primitive autopilot that was tested in an 0-10. His work was added to similar systems developed and tested as early as 1912 by Spur Butt. Again, it would be some years before autopilots became a feature of regular operation. As the commercial aviation expanded, albeit slowly, it was only a matter of time before accidents involving passengers occurred. The first accident was on a scheduled airline flight in Britain, happened December 14, 1920. Little after takeoff from foggy London airfield, a Handlin Page Transport 0400 crashed, killing its pilot, flight engineer, and 2 passengers. 4 other passengers survived the accident, but the occupants of the Dallarham Airways DH-18 that crashed on April 7, 1922 were less fortunate. Their aircraft hit an F-60 traveling towards them, as the pilots of both aircraft had used a road below for navigation. All 7 people in that accident were killed. See, back then they didn't have radar like we do now, so that there was no air traffic control telling them which way to go and where to turn and where other aircrafts were. Below is a Douglas DC, April 1924. Still some early aircrafts. And it was pointed out to me that these words are mirrored, so do your best if you can read them. If not, the information's there. Sorry about it being mirrored. New decades, new types. Several significant aircraft types appeared in the 1920s. In some instances, the machines itself was important in signaling the arrival of a future force in aviation. In other cases, the aircraft heralded a revolution in itself. The Ant-1 of 1923 was an unremarkable one-off single-seater built in demonstrate the metal manufacturing technique of its designer, Andrew Nikolai Tubu. Tubu designed Brewer was in full swing by 1925, building the first in a series of military and commercial aircraft. That continued today. Although of tremendous significance, at least for general and sporting aviation, de Havilland's latest creation, the DH-60M Moth, for the first time in 1925. For more importance for the airlines, the superlative Fokker VF-3 flew later that same year, with Americans' first airliner. The quality, the Ford Tri-Motor, you heard it, Ford actually made airplanes back then, joining them in 1926. Airline development, Queensland and Northern Territories Aerial Service, Qantas, the Australian national carrier, was founded in 1920, while the Soviet Union's first state airline, Dubrovnik, was established in 1923. Okay, so this plane is from 1929, the red one. It is a D-dome and bullet flew super bidden. It has a seat for two, 12-cylinder engine. The bottom plane is from 1929. It's a Berlinet 191GR. Airline development. Lost my spot. Delmar Airways expanded its scheduled service to Berlin in 1923 before disappearing into Imperial Airways a year later. As British desperate and struggling airlines were brought together as one company, by 1929 Imperial had expanded sufficiently to begin the first commercial service to London, to India, building its pioneering 0400 flight in 1918. In the United States, where we're from, the experimental airmail flights bore fruit as the first commercial mail routes were opened in 1926. That's what helped develop aviation in the United States. Planes were used to move mail throughout the U.S. because they were faster than trains. Long longer since forgotten, all but airline history, Venair Air Service became United Airlines in 1933. Ooh, a bunch of facts. I know you guys can't read it because it's mirrored, but it goes through stuff that happened from 1920 through 1925. And then on the other side is 1926 to 1929. Sorry, it's mirrored. I don't know what to do about that. I'm getting a new camera, so maybe we can figure it out with the new camera together. The mega carrier survives today. Another of North America's most historical important airlines, Pan American Airways, flew its first service in 1927, operating to South America. Pan Am is no longer in business anymore. In the 1920s was also a time for great piloting endeavors, especially in terms of distance flying, both by individuals and crews. Aircrafts had already been flown over huge distances, but now pilots were looking to cover long range, non-stop. Prize money, fame, and personalities were often at the heart of the attempts. Although many were also sponsored by the military, whatever the motivation, they served the airlines well, publicly demonstrating what air travel could do. The first of the great long-distance flight was that of Lieutenant Kelly and Mercedes, who flew their first Fokker T-2 nonstop across the United States in 1923. Another Fokker found fame in 1926 when Lieutenant Commander Byrd and Floyd Bennett flew 1,600 miles over the North Pole. Fokker, a C-2, and a represented 4 further nonstop fears in 1927. Hey, Noah, check out the screen door. Flying from the continental U.S. to Hawaii, and in 1928, the first crossing in the Tasman Sea. The most famous long-range flight of the period, and perhaps the most famous ever, was the Charles Lindbergh from America. He crossed the North Atlantic solo in a single-engine Ryan NYP on May 20th and 21st, 1927. Just 8 hours had elapsed since Alcock and Brown had struggled across to crash land in Ireland. But now Lindbergh made it to Paris, landing to global celebrity. But It is typical history that second place is often forgot. The Frenchmen Coates and Lebrix flew their first non-stop crossing of the South Atlantic in their Breguet BRG biplane on October 14th and 15th, 1927. While a German-led crew completed the much more difficult east-west crossing of the North Atlantic against prevailing winds less than a year after Lindbergh's famous flight on April 1928. Oh, here's a picture of Charles Lindbergh and Ryan NYP. Charles Lindbergh, first across the Atlantic from New York to Paris. He had other struggles in life. His son or daughter was kidnapped and never found. And well, it looks like we've just finished another chapter. So next time we'll come back. We'll read North American developments. We'll get into some more exciting stuff. So until next time, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy and keep watching. Thank you.